One of the things that we all know, this is the theme of the month, is momentum. That's our theme at Global Truth Center for this month, is momentum. So it seems to me perfect timing, the very last Sunday of that theme, to ask the question, where does momentum start? If you look at the word, it's an interesting word because you can break it down into two parts that become one. The first is moment. The word momentum has moment at the start of it, suggesting that there is a time, a place, a space where momentum begins. The second part of the word, you can probably all guess this. Not necessarily chanting as in om, but thinking about it in terms of thoughtfulness. So moment plus thoughtfulness equals momentum. That's how I started to think about this, is that the momentum, when we ask the question, where does momentum start from? It comes from a willingness to take space, a moment, and decide, think about, choose what you want from that moment. So Raymond Charles Barker said, decision is the center of the creative process. That's what he's talking about momentum. He's saying that at the center of the creative process of what you want to create is decision. So you take the moment, you decide, and then you create momentum. So Raymond Charles Barker, who wrote The Power of Decision, one of the foundational books that we study and understand and helps us view this, said it's decision that's at that point. So what if then the moment you decide is the moment that everything changes? So if you think about that, look at that picture of that the colors exploding out. Imagine that at the center of that is the moment where you decide something, and then from that point, everything changes for you, for everything around you. So momentum then really is born when you say, I'm ready. You have to say in that moment, I'm ready for things to change. I'm ready for something new to happen in my life. I'm ready for my choice to come into my experience. So yesterday morning, before we left, you may have heard we were staying in one of the most amazing places I've ever been in. Incredible. And before we got in the car to head to the airport yesterday, I was walking around a little bit, walked up the street from where we were, and I had this view. This is at the very top of the hill. There was a little bluff with a for sale sign on it. Now, what's fascinating about this is this hillside where we stayed essentially has steep hills, and the way that people build houses there is there's a tiny little foundation that rests on the land, and the rest of the house essentially rests in air. They create a foundation for it. They build the foundation. In fact, to the right of us and to the left of us, new houses were being built, and we got to see construction workers put the foundation for what would become a house on that. So here's a sign that basically says, if you want to have this view of San Jose del Cabo with an amazing sunrise every morning, this is for sale. Someone might drive by here and say, this is the moment that I'm going to decide that this is mine. If you're curious, I looked it up this morning. That's actually, that little blue part on the picture there is the parcel of land that you would buy for a cool $988,000. Right? For essentially, it literally was, from where I stand to the edge of the stage, that was how much actual flat land you had. The rest was potential. You had to see the house that would be there in midair and know that it could happen. You had to make that decision. So someone may decide that. I'm guessing they will, because there were no shortage of houses being built there. So people would come along and decide that was for them. Ernest Holmes said, the one who can consciously, you decide, you are aware of it, unify himself with the law of good, will find that it is done unto him as he believes. Foundational idea that when you are conscious of it, you decide it, you unify with that field, with firm conviction, with firm belief, it will happen. So the title of my talk has nothing to do with land in Mexico and everything to do with aviation. The title is Wheels Up, which is a metaphor that I explored when everyone, I think it was the day you guys went to Todos Santos, I stayed back and was working on the talk. And I've been thinking about this idea of aviation and using it as a metaphor. So the question that I want to ask you, and it was one I started exploring, is this: when does an airplane take off? What's the moment that an airplane decides to take off? Now, I had a good conversation with Michael Pancake. Michael, I trust, is at home, recovering, doing well. Michael and I talked a lot about, Michael's a long-time airline pilot, so I got a lot of sort of the skinny, and he would tell me the things that pilots train for, the emergency conditions. I'm like, I don't want to hear about that, Michael. I'm about to get on a plane to Mexico. Don't need to hear about any of that. I'm going to know, I want you to tell me about the 99.999% of the time things work well. But the question of when does an airplane take off? Is it going back to that? Momentum is born when you say, I'm ready. Does the plane take off when it's ready? Possibly. So I want to look at a couple of points. You might also say it's when the wheels come up, when the plane is off the ground finally. And I was conscious of this yesterday as we were taking off. We've all been in this circumstance, right? Where the plane turns onto the runway, power, and there's a certain point where you know it's got the momentum and it just takes off. That's wheels up. But did it start there? Is that when a plane takes off, or does it happen before that? So I kind of broke it down for me to think about. The first point of decision is at the gate. So leaving the gate is a decision. Almost all of us will go to the airport. We have a destination in mind. It used to be, when I was growing up, that you could just go to an airport and hang out there. But now you actually have to have a destination in mind, and you have to have bought a ticket to go in there. So you go in, you buy a ticket, but you're not quite committed yet, because you could just stay in the terminal. Wouldn't be very smart. You would have spent the money to buy the ticket, but you could just stay there. And I think that's how sometimes with decisions that we have in our life, things that we think we want, we may just stay in the airport. We may go over and hang out by the bar and have a drink with doubt, have some nachos with regret, have a hamburger, a $30 hamburger with uncertainty. And so those could become our friends. You could choose to just stay in the terminal and never leave. And it was pointed out to me by my good friend Amy, the word terminal. Leaving the terminal is the only way you get your destination. So don't let it be a terminal. So you are going to decide to leave the terminal. You're going to get on the plane. Raymond Charles Barker put it nicely where he said, indecision is actually the individual's decision to fail. You could just stay at the airport and go, I'm not sure if I'm going to go. I might not. Oh, look, they're boarding my flight now. I could get on it. I would, maybe, who knows? That's you deciding to fail because you didn't decide. So let's say, because you're all smart people, you get on the plane. So now the plane is taxiing out to where it's going to take off. We've all been in this moment. I probably hundreds of flights, and it almost always works out this way. You taxi out to the runway. That is also a commitment. If you were the pilot, you are committing to moving that plane in place to take off. So you move out. If you've all been in a circumstance like this, the plane goes out, same way yesterday. You taxi out. There's one usually long runway. You taxi out to the end of it. And what happens then? You turn, right? The plane turns. We all know this moment. We've internalized it. The plane turns, and then what the pilot sees next is this, the active runway. That's what's ahead of you. That's what's facing you. So you have now gotten yourself to the place where you can make that decision because you can see what's ahead of you. The plane knows where it's going. You've made that choice. So is this the moment that a plane takes off? I'm going to say no, because you could still just sit there. You've committed to getting yourself there. You know where you want to go, but there's one more thing that you need to do. You need to throttle forward. You need to put the throttle forward to add power to your decision. Now, what's interesting in my conversation with Mike about this, we were talking about the throttle, because I asked him, I said, I'm assuming, my dad was a pilot. I never thought to ask him this. If you have the throttle in front of you, you push it forward to go, right? And he said, absolutely. You push it forward to go. That is adding power to the engines. Now, what Michael said was, there used to be, on the top of the throttle, there used to be little balls. There would be like a black one, white one, red one, and there was a phrase that meant something different than I never knew. I knew what it meant in general, but I didn't know this is where it came from. And the phrase is this: balls to the wall, which meant this is a picture of a DC-3 cockpit. This is the way they used to look. So you can see those little, the black one, the white one, the red one, those are the throttle for the engine. So what balls to the wall meant was, for the aviators, it meant you pushed that throttle all the way to the front of the cockpit dash. So you were basically adding, what Mike said, max power. When a plane takes off, it's using all of its power to take off. It's adding that to create momentum. So that's the phrase for that. So going back to the gate and bringing it to our own decision, our own life, let me ask you this. Where in your life are you still sitting at the gate? Maybe there's a decision that you're thinking about making, or you're playing with. You're sitting at the bar with that decision, and you're having a drink with that decision, and you haven't committed to it. It's interesting. On Tuesday, I had a conversation with my prayer partner, Amy Steinberg, and we were talking about this. I was going through the idea, and she was sharing with me, and she gave me permission to talk about this. She has committed to doing a one-woman show. She's got a theater booked for one night at the end of June in New York City. Her dream. She is required to have at least 15 people show up. That's the minimum that she commits to. And as we were talking about it, she said, I still feel some uncertainty about it. I feel some doubt. So she essentially, in this analogy, she left the gate with the doubt, and she's now sitting at the runway waiting to take off, but she's still got the doubt. She's still got the uncertainty. It'd almost be like that pilot who's sitting at the end of the runway waiting to take off, and now they're wondering, did we bring enough fuel? Do we have enough gas to get where we're going? Is there anything maybe that's on the runway that would get in our way of taking off? Like, that is not the point to be making those decisions, right? Though that is the point to know that you are committed. And so as Amy and I were talking about it, she realized, yes, I am committed. I know that this is mine to do. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to it. And she realized that the doubts that were coming in were just relics from a time where something didn't work out. And it crept in and made her question herself now. So where in your life are you still at the gate? And then the second question is, what decision are you ready to power up? Is there some decision that you could make that you're sitting at that bar with, where you could power up that decision? You could imagine, take your right hand, imagine you are in the left seat as the pilot of that plane, ready to add power to that decision. Because, and this is where I came to in terms of asking the question for myself of where does the plane actually take off? The real decision is made not when the wheels lift up, but when we add power to our decision. Which brings me to my final question. Why don't we add power to our decisions? Why do we sit on that runway and stare at the runway and allow ourselves to come up with all the reasons why maybe we shouldn't take off? Like why we shouldn't add power to the decision? I think could be a number of reasons, but as I reflected in my own life, one of the reasons is this. We remember past crashes. It's kind of a silly example. I had to come up with this picture before I got in a plane yesterday, so I made it as silly as possible because I didn't want to put anything non-silly into the universe before I got on a plane. But we remember past crashes. I've shared before, 30 plus years ago, I started a business. It lasted about a year, did not succeed. So at the time, I decided for myself, stupidly, that was a failure. That business was a failure. And furthermore, I thought, that means I am a failure at business, something I'm not good at. So I could remember if I were to start something new now, I would look at that and go, okay, that's a belief I have that it'll happen again. So that is a past crash that limits me. Ernest Holmes said, limitation is not a thing. It is only a belief. And if you are in a science of mind center like we are, if you were someone that knows how to use your mind, beliefs can be changed. That's what we do all the time. We look at the beliefs that we have. We ask, does this belief serve me or not? And if it doesn't, let go of it. So if you think about the airplane, I guarantee you there's one thing you've never seen on any airplane that you've ever flown on, and that is this: side mirrors or a rear view mirror. And the reason why is we don't take off looking backwards. You take off by looking at the runway ahead of you and being clear that that runway is ready to lift you up into the air. Emerson wrote letters, and he wrote a letter to one of his daughters, and it's the most beautiful letter, and I'm going to excerpt part of it here because I think it so encapsulates this point. He said, "Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities, no doubt, crept in. Forget those as soon as you can." I love that. Like it's real, right? He's saying some blunders and absurdities crept in. He's not saying it was the perfect day and everything worked out well for you. He's saying to us, to his daughter that this letter was written to, no doubt some of that will have crept in. But he's also saying, forget it as soon as you can. Tonight, whatever happens today, forget that, is what Emerson was saying. And he goes on to say, tomorrow is a new day. Begin it well and serenely, with calmness, with confidence, and with too high a spirit to be, not a typo here, his words, cumbered with your old nonsense. I love that part, cumbered with your own nonsense. This is Emerson who told us to get our bloated nothingness out of the way. So he's saying, cumbered, fun word, with your old nonsense. I love that word nonsense because he's playful with that. He's saying, look, it's nonsense. Why would you accept that this is true? It is nonsense. And so when you let go of that, you are going to be able to move into that day serenely and with a high spirit. So right now, I believe everybody here was given a piece of paper when you came in, right? Does anyone not have a piece of paper? If you don't, okay, perfect. So, and if you're at home, go grab a piece of paper. Don't worry, you won't miss anything because everyone's going to do something in a moment with their paper in the room here. This is what I'm calling, again, not a typo, an experimental. So it's a combination of an experiment and a experiential. Experimental. Doesn't exactly flow. But you can see the image here is of paper airplanes. So I want to do a little experiment where everyone is going to make a paper airplane. And this was in part born by, we all have had the experience where when the kids come up and Shauna is asking them what they did downstairs in the kids program, a lot of times we're all like, oh, that sounds fun. I wanted that experience. Well, I would love for today, if the kids come in here and they're the ones that go, they look around and say, I wanted that experience. So this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to make your paper airplane. And what I'd love to do during that 1 minute, this is the view of the place that we stayed at. It was the most incredible. It literally, I'm just standing on the pool deck there taking a picture of this. So I'm going to play this. This is now a video for 1 minute. So make your paper airplane however you want. Think of yourself as, we're not going to throw them yet, Stan. Think of yourself as that 7-year-old who had fun, who believed that you would do this kind of stuff all the time, and you had fun. Now, as you're putting it together, it's possible, if you haven't made a paper airplane in a long time, that you may start to experience some of the feelings that you had when you were young, where you recall what it was like to make a paper airplane and what happened. Now, this is the part that's interesting. You would throw your paper airplane, and a certain outcome would happen. If you were a kid, you wanted your plane to soar, you wanted it to go far, but if we're being honest, in the back of your mind, there could have also been a belief there, because you'd seen past crashes, that when you threw that paper airplane, that it was not going to fly like you wanted it to. But I'm now going to invite you, again, take a picture of this in your mind. Imagine this is the location that you're about to launch your paper airplane from. And I have this question for you next. Raymond Charles Barker said, "You are not under the necessity of accepting the memory of yesterday as the pattern of today." So as you're holding your plane, you don't have to accept the way that your paper airplanes flew before. You can understand that there can be a new pattern that starts with a new way of thinking. So, what if this plane soars? What if this is the one that takes off? What if this is your decision? What if it takes off? What if your belief is the wind beneath this plane? What if you believe that this plane will soar? And the last question, what if you think about, again, that too high a spirit to be cumbered with your old nonsense, let go of your old nonsense. Let go of the way that you used to think about that plane flying. And the last question, what if, as you hold this plane in your hand and you think about what this plane represents, what if this plane is the doubt you are about to release? Put all your doubt in this plane right now, what you're holding in your hand, and know that when you send it flying, that your doubt, whatever you've decided that you want to do, if you had any doubt about it, it's gone with this plane. So, we're now going to, in a moment, launch the plane. But I want you to think about whatever decision that you are making in your life. Think about, again, adding that throttle, adding that power to it. Think of the balls to the wall, putting the power, the momentum into that. So, is everybody ready? You've got your plane at home, you got your plane in the room. What we're going to do, because we're not going to poke anyone's eyes out, so your eyes are going to be closed, which is even better. Because now in your mind's eye, you can see your plane fly wherever you want. You can imagine yourself back on that cliff where we were, that plane flying forever. You can imagine whatever you want going as far as it's possible. So what we're going to do as we finish here is everyone's got their plane back, and when you close your eyes, I'm going to count to 3, and then we're all going to say balls to the wall. You ready? All right. 1, 2, 3. Balls to the wall. Namaste.